Let me talk about that just briefly. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of people here have high net worth, investors, business owners. I truly believe that the two best investments you could possibly have are real estate and business, right? Because if you look at real life, if you look at the real stats, the wealthiest people in the world have a business and or they even have real estate. But most of the time, 100% they have a business. Secondarily, they got real estate. And that's the big thing. It's like, that's why I'm an anti-financial advisor. I think most financial advisors, although they're very good-hearted, they absolutely suck at what they do. And how do I know? Because I used to be one of them. I was raised by a father that was very much like, he would be considered like the older brother of Dave Ramsey. He taught me to be cheap, save everything, spend nothing, pay off all your debt, and then someday you might have some freedom. But unfortunately, I know that when he taught me about money, it was always about there was never enough of it. We can't afford this. What do you think I am, made of money? Money doesn't grow on trees, all those kind of phrases you hear. And I vowed I didn't want to be like that, because he would even say that he believed that work would literally kill him at his job just from the stress and everything else. He had strokes in his 40s. He had heart attacks in his 50s. I didn't want to live that kind of life. And so after going into college, I realized that the entrepreneur path was really the one that gave me the most ability for freedom. And so when I was looking for what that would be, of course, the first thing that came along is someone says, hey, you should get interviewed as a financial advisor, not knowing they take anybody off the street as long as you can pass a test and not be a criminal. And long story short, I did that for 4 years. I loved being my own boss and whatnot, and I loved learning about money. But it came to a head when I sat down with my own father. He said, Chris, I need some help financially. Now, again, great saver. He did everything by the book. But he said, I want to retire. I'm 61 years old. I want to be done with my job now. So he opens up his books for the first time in my life, first time I ever saw his financial situation. He opens it up. He paid off his house. He was totally debt free. He had been stuffing money in his 401k for decades. You would think that this guy would be doing it perfectly. Unfortunately, I said, Dad, if you want to retire today, you better hope you die in 5 years, because that's how long it will be before you run out of money. Again, he saved his money. He got his 401k match from his employer. He paid off all his debt. He was debt free. It didn't mean squat. And that was hard on me, because I was teaching people, I was selling them on hopium, right? I was selling them on this dream that someday they'll be able to retire. And that's just not the case. And so as a result, I started looking for answers. And that's when I came to find out real estate was amazing, right? That was a place to actually be. I remember when my friend told me, he says, Chris, how many of your clients are financially free? I said, well, financially free, meaning what? Where they don't really worry about money. I said, well, they all worry about money. They all worry about running out of money. He said, well, how many? I said, well, none. I mean, they're all like broke that way. If you're not talking about financial freedom, none of them are financially free. Okay, how about this, Chris? How many of you guys as financial advisors are financially free, not off the commissions you're earning, but actually doing the investing? And I thought about it. I said, well, none, because there's guys who've been working here since the late 1970s and they still can't retire. There's your problem, Chris. So he started getting me introduced to the world of real estate investing, realized, that was what worked versus what I was teaching as financial advisor was proving not to work. Therefore, I left. I couldn't keep my integrity intact and keep teaching what I taught. And so I left that world, vowed never to teach about money again. I would just be a mortgage broker and teach ballroom dancing on the side. Little known fact, I used to be one of the nation's top amateur ballroom dancers. So that's what was my plan. Well, of course, I got into real estate investing. And before I know it, as I started focusing on cash flow and passive income, I was able to retire myself at the age of 28, later that next year. And of course, naturally, like any person that's 28 years old and retired, people want to know how you did it. And so that's where I came out of retirement in 2007 to teach people that, like, how to really become work optional. You work because you want to, not because you have to. And so the topic I'm going to talk about here today, I'm not going to talk about investments, although we could talk about it some other time, but really, I want to talk about a tool that I learned and really perfected over the last 15 years that will help throw a little extra fuel in the fire. Because maybe you're already on your own path. Maybe you're doing real estate investing. Maybe you're doing some of that stuff. But this is a strategy that, if used correctly, can actually allow you to create money and get returns in two places at once. So here's the deal, guys. Like, if I can really show you how you can store your money in a savings that's better than the bank, safer than the stock market, it's tax-free, it's guaranteed, it's protected from sue happy creditors and lawsuits and people like that. And It can even give you a passive income booster that will pay you and shave off years towards your goals, just like hundreds of my clients and I have already done. If that's what you want to figure out, then you're in the right place. That's exactly what we're going to cover today. Now, this is not a new strategy. It's been used for years and years and years. Walt Disney did it. If you've ever been to Disney World, this strategy was actually used and implemented so that the banks would even give him a loan in the first place. So he used it. Ray Kroc at McDonald's, when he took over, he bought it from the McDonald's brothers. He actually used this to be able to pay for his employees, his executives, to pay their salaries. Pampered Chef. If you have any kind of Pampered Chef in your house like I do, because my wife will buy it, if you have Pampered Chef, the seed money to start Pampered Chef was using this same exact strategy. I even had, I have a podcast called the Money Ripples Podcast. And, I brought in a guy named Eddie Wilson, who's he's started many, many companies, sold for hundreds of millions of dollars. And when I was interviewing him, I was shocked to find out that his grandfather in the banking industry, where they were a president of a bank, actually taught him the same strategy as well. And so lots of people have been using it. We even had dentists that have used this as well, saved them over 2.25 million over the next 20 years, even though they were doing the same strategy, but we were helping them do it better. So, but here's the thing, guys like Dave Ramsey, they're not going to get it. If you've ever heard infinite banking mentioned, which is what we're talking about today, and this is not the traditional old infinite banking, guys like Dave Ramsey say, he'll poo-poo all over it. I mean, then again, he poo-poos all over everything, right? Let's be honest. That guy, the guy made all his money in business and real estate, but he tells you to throw your money away in stocks, and it's fine if you want to do stocks, but, I believe that if you're going to be out there, teach people publicly, have some integrity and tell them to do what you did, not just give them some crap because it's what's popular. And that's what gets you making a lot of money. So that's the thing. He doesn't get this strategy, especially the way we do it. He's never seen it. So, but investors have been using the strategy. Banks have been using the strategy for many years. This is who is not for, okay? There's three categories of people that this may not work for. One, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, if you can't rub two nickels together, basically, if you can't save any money, then you don't need to use this kind of savings, okay? You need to just simply start getting some savings and build up a bank savings account or something like that. So if you're paycheck to paycheck, this isn't for you. Secondly, if you're in horrible health, this won't work for you. The good news is, however, if you have somebody that's a business partner or family member or something like that that is in better health, this could work. Yeah, this is health related, health based. And then third, if you're over the age of 70, this strategy is not as effective. I'll be flat out honest. You could still use it, but it's going to be more of a variation of it than actually doing this. And so, and here's the thing, guys, there's a lot of issues going on today because right now, the last year, how many times have we heard about banks failing and stuff? We got the government's racking up $1 trillion of debt. We've got all these kind of things happening right now that we need to make sure, especially with interest rates going up, that we can have control of our money to be able to take control of our own financial lives. And so this is kind of a strategy you use to unbank yourself. So rather than putting your money in a place where you earn 0.nothing% and then you get taxed on that 0.nothing%, what if we could do that tax-free? By the way, I actually need to update this. I forgot to do it. Just yesterday, I sent myself the article. Warren Buffett now has over 165 billion in cash that he's stockpiling right now. That just came out over the weekend when they had their reporting of earnings. This guy keeps adding more cash. Why do we want more cash? I'll tell you why, because in 2022, I'm going to give you guys a little bonus here, because if you ever want to know where the best place to invest in the place that nobody wants to invest in that moment, right? For example, if everybody tells you you should buy real estate like in 2006, that's the time to probably sell your real estate. If everybody tells you to buy in the stock market, which people are starting to do again, that's the time to not be in the stock market. If they all tell you to buy Bitcoin, that's the time to not be in Bitcoin, right? The best investment is typically the one that you don't invest into. Well, I remember in 2022, spring of 22, before they started raising interest rates, I remember the big thing we kept hearing was don't keep your money in cash, right? Don't keep it in cash, because if you keep it in cash, you'll lose to inflation, right? Once I heard that over and over and over, I realized I need to store more cash. I need to have better protection, because I guarantee there's going to be a moment where people will be illiquid. They won't have the cash. And if I have the cash, I can make some of those rules. Warren Buffett's doing the same thing. He's building more and more cash, and I'm doing the same. But here's the thing, guys. We don't want to build that into our savings accounts, because we know even with a high yield savings account, yeah, you might make 4 or 5%, but I still have to pay taxes on that, right? And yes, we got some great tax strategies that we get from Protect Wealth, of course. But still, if I could be able to grow it more and have it be tax-free, I'm going to choose that. But I want it liquid. I want it available. And even guys like, John F. Kennedy, well, really Robert Kennedy, this is something he actually used in the Great Depression. He actually had stores of cash. He was, as a bootlegger, he had $4 million in net worth in 1929. By 1935, as he started buying up a ton of commercial real estate, he was then worth over $100 million. That's how you get those brothers all of a sudden hitting on Marilyn Monroe, right? That's what you do. That's where you get the money to do that kind of stuff. Again, cash is king, but we want to be able to do it. So that's where this strategy, this max ROI infinite banking, as I like to call it, really comes into place. This is using a life insurance product, whole life insurance, one of the most boring things you'd ever use. By the way, I remember even first hearing about this, I was shocked this was even a thing, because I was a financial advisor for 4 years. If anybody ever asked me about whole life insurance, I'd say, why? You get paid nothing. Now, did I know anything about it? No. I just regurgitated what other financial advisors told me. And so I just passed it on to my clients saying, don't you dare do this. And for the most part, they're kind of right. It's good. It's nice and secure, but it's not very sexy. However, depending on how you use it while you're alive, not when you're dead, but while you're alive, can actually create a lot of awesome things in your life there. So this is not the traditional Nelson Nash. If you guys read Becoming Your Own Banker, great book. But what I'm going to teach you here actually goes beyond this. In fact, I kind of debunk some of the things that are taught in that book, because truth is, you can do it better. Now, I remember I first learned about it. I even read the book in 2006 after I started getting into real estate. And everybody was telling me this is the best thing since sliced bread, especially if you're in real estate and whatnot. Well, I bought it. I bought into it. And I remember, even though I had an insurance license, I let somebody else write it. And I remember asking him, I said, hey, this thing seems really expensive. Is there a way I can make it perform better, where I can have a better return on this cash? Because if you're not sure what whole life insurance does, which I know most of you probably do, but if you're not, term insurance is just death insurance, right? We get that. You buy it for a period of time, you die, you get paid. If you don't, you've wasted your money. Whole life has a death benefit, but it also has this tax-free savings account inside of it. I was asking him, I said, hey, is there a way I can build up more money in that? He said, no, you can't. Well, although I was, kind of fat and happy in 2006 and 2007, well, when the recession started hitting and my real estate got hurt, and I had launched a new business teaching people how to get out of the rat race, and everybody we were focusing on were real estate flippers who were then now not getting paid because they were losing money hand over fist. Next thing I know, I'm in the hole myself. I start falling deeper and deeper in debt to the point I was over $1 million in debt. Needless to say, I didn't have a lot of money for anything because I had business expenses, I had my home expenses, but our income was down a lot, especially with all the business we were trying to launch. So I remember I was like, what can I do with this policy? Because this policy is charging me, at that time, like $1,000 a month, not a lot, but I couldn't even pay $1,000 a month. And I remember asking the company, I said, is there a way I can stop payments? They said, no, even though you've paid 25 grand into this, there's no cash in here to help float the payments for you. And so I lost it. I wasted 25 grand putting it to what really became the biggest waste of money ever, getting this traditional whole life policy. Months later, as I'm starting to research and really kind of still miffed about what happened, I found out that agent lied to me. And so I started running my own numbers. Remember, I was insurance licensed. So I started to do my own research, running my own numbers, found out he could have done it better. And so I confronted him 2 hours in his office. It was a screaming match. Okay. Because he would throw out this, oh, you should have a higher death benefit because you're a human life value. I was like, I don't give a crap if it goes broke. Who cares if I have this death benefit that I'm going to lose anyways. Right. And so we went back and forth. He finally got to the truth. He said, Chris, the reason I didn't do it this way is because I couldn't afford to cut my commissions. I said, there's the real answer. There's the problem I see here. This needs to change right now. And so I stopped sending referrals. By the way, this guy is no longer in business. He now works for a bank. Okay. So if that tells you anything, banks are awesome. So anyways, I started really spending and dedicating the next 15 years trying to do it better for myself, especially as an investor, where I'm somebody who's an investor and business owner. I want to get the best bang for my buck for me, let alone anybody else that I know. And that's kind of where I started really, getting to the point where we started to find a good system to do it even better than what I showed him. Like I found out we can do ways that are just amazing, better than anybody in the industry, especially if you want the best ROI possible, which is why we call it max ROI infinite banking. We also kind of joke around and call it no BS infinite banking because there's so much BS in the industry as well. And so, there you go. All right, here's how it works. Let's get into the nitty gritty, the nuts and bolts, right? Like I said, this if you're using the cash value, the cash savings part of this, it's like a tax-free supercharged savings account. Here's how. One is tax-free. It's like a Roth IRA, a gross tax deferred. It comes out tax-free. It's not taxed at all, but you do use it and fund it with after-tax dollars. Like I mentioned, in most states, it's 100% protected from creditors and lawsuits. You could have millions of dollars stored in here. They can't get to it. They cannot find a way to get to it. And I know Protect Wealth is all about that, and that's something that they teach too. It's also safer than the bank, not just because you store millions here, but with banks. I'll give you an example. The Great Depression. There were over 35,000 banks in 1929. After the Great Depression, when you got to 1936, there were only 13,000 left. About 2/3 went out of business. Insurance companies, 4 went out of business. Why? Well, one, I mean, now we do have FDIC, but here's the problem. FDIC, that's supposed to protect your savings. They only have enough to cover 1.5% of the savings out there today. So if 10% of banks happen to fail in another recession or depression, another financial crisis, you're going to be waiting a little while to get your money back, right? You're going to have Congress frantically figuring out how to print more money and drive up inflation so that you can finally get some money out of your bank. Where here, the insurance companies don't rely on FDIC. They have what are called reinsurance companies that they legally have to get. So reinsurance companies are big global insurance companies that cover them in case they default. So if they ever happen to default, which happens very rarely because they don't take big risks and gambles like banks do, if that happens to happen, they got you covered. They can cover your death benefit, your cash in there, everything. So in my opinion, it's safer than the bank. Guaranteed growth, even right now, they're paying pretty much about 6% currently. There's no stupid limits or penalties. There's no 10% penalty if you try to access it before you're a certain age. They don't have that kind of thing. Bank leverage, you can actually leverage with the banks just like Walt Disney did. You can do that. And I'll explain that a little bit too, how that works. You can protect your family. Obviously, there's a death benefit involved, which I hardly ever focus on, but it's still a cool part of it. And most importantly, you have access to cash today. You actually have the ability to tap into that money right away when you start it, at least if it's designed the right way. Now, here's our ways you can use this. Number one, you can use it as an emergency fund. Now, I'll tell you, it's interesting when, my situation here, like my wife, she has a kind of a high security gland. Maybe you have spouses like that too. She says, Chris, I want at least 300 or 400,000 sitting in savings that you don't touch, we don't touch. It's just there for if the world blows up. And granted, we've got tens of thousands a month coming in of passive income, but still, she's like, I want to have that real safety net there. And I said, well, here's the deal. Even with 300,000, if I let that sit in our 0.1% bank saves account, right, with our credit union, that means we're going to make $300 a year. And then I'm going to get taxed on the $300. So I might walk away with $200 in interest. So I told her, I was like, let's make a deal here. I've got several hundred thousand sitting in my life insurance. Why don't we earmark some of that? Let's take $250,000 of that. That I don't touch. I don't invest with, even though that's a cool thing you can do with it. I'm just going to let it sit there, earning its, almost 6% tax-free dividend. And then only keep 50,000 in the bank just for quick money, because I can get to my money in my life insurance within about a week or so. But in the bank, I can walk in today, pull out some of that money. So I said, what if we keep 50,000 in the bank, 250,000 in my life insurance, even at 5%, even if I only netted 5% on my life insurance, still that's 12,500 a year off of that, tax-free, plus another $50 that I get taxed on from the bank account, right? So I still make 12,000 plus more dollars just doing that one thing. So even if I don't use it like the strategy I'm talking about to double dip, where you can get your investment money to pay you twice, still it's a great way to store and diversify my money, keep it safe, especially because I'm not trusting banks lately. I think we're not done yet. I think Silicon Valley Bank was just the beginning. I think there's much more to come, especially with a lot of the commercial real estate stuff. So I want to keep it somewhere safe where I'm not worrying about that money. So that's number one. 2, cash flowing investments. This works great, especially with real estate, even works great in business. If you're going to use it to create some additional streams of revenue, wherever it might be in your business, this can work awesome. And I'll talk about that more in a bit. Collateral. I had one client where he's a chiropractor out in the Midwest. He's like, Chris, I've got this insurance policy. I'm thinking I'm just going to cancel it, cash all the money out, and buy a building outright in cash. And I said, hold on there, Sparky, before you just go and do that, let's see if we have some options with it. So I told him, I said, once you go to your local bank here, the one you've been working with, And why don't you see if they'll use this as collateral along with the building? So they essentially get double collateral. And he had about 300,000 in there. He went to the bank. He said, I need 375,000. And he says, can I use this as collateral in my life insurance? They said, absolutely. Yes, we'll use that. And of course, you got the building too. So we'll not only give you a loan, but we'll give you a loan that's over 2% less than the going rate right now. So he got this dirt cheap mortgage. He was paying like 1,800 bucks a month, got enough money for the build out of the building and everything else so that he could get a renter in there to then pay for his mortgage payment for him. So now his practice was completely rent free for himself, although he is paying rent, as we know, paying himself, paying rent that then gets paid to him personally. But again, that building is covered. Well, a year and a half later, he goes back to that same bank. He says, listen, you use that as collateral. Well, now that the building is done, can you take that lien off my life insurance cash that's in there? And they said, yeah. And we'll keep the terms the same. So he still has the same dirt cheap interest rate that he'll probably never want to get rid of. And of course, now he's still got that 300,000 to do whatever he wants with again, right? So there's cool things you can do in a sense because it's that guaranteed thing because they're going to guarantee to pay at least 3% or more a year. And with companies we've used, they've always paid more than that. So it's pretty awesome for that standpoint alone. You could pay off high interest loans. That's one way to use it. I wouldn't pay off all loans. There's a myth out there. They say, you could buy cars with it. You could buy a house with it. Although that's true, I actually, I was in a car accident, pretty serious one last fall, totaled our vehicle and they gave us money for it, but we decided to buy a newer vehicle and had to get more money with that. I could have paid cash for that. No problem. However, I asked them, I said, what kind of deals do you guys have? They said, oh, well, hey, we can give you a 3.9% 3-year car loan. I said, awesome. I can beat the snot out of that in my investments any day, not to mention inflation. We all know is higher than that. So I said, great, I'll take that. I didn't use my policy because I knew I would pay interest to the insurance company. It would be at a higher rate. So I'm going to leverage the bank's money for whenever I can get it, which is why even with real estate and cash flowing investments, I'll still get a mortgage. I'll still get a mortgage and use this instead as the down payment where I can't get a mortgage. If I can't get cheap money from the bank, I use this instead to get more leverage off my money. Extra retirement income, that's one thing that a lot of them talk about. They try to tell you, hey, wait 20, 30 years until it actually has something in there. Then you can make money off of it. I think that's a slow way to do it. As we're talking about creating generational wealth as we got started here, I like to have generational wealth. Here's my opinion. The best way to create generational wealth is creating wealth right now and later too. If the more you can create wealth today, the better it is. Don't save it for someday, hoping you might make something. That's just ridiculous. Yes, it can be tax-free retirement income, but I think that's just icing on the cake. Here's another big one that a lot of people lately have been using it more and more for is that people are starting to hate their 529 college savings plans. They're realizing no control. It doesn't even really make that good of money anyways. And what if the market tanks right before your kid goes to college and all of a sudden it loses a year's worth of tuition in 1 year? Well, a lot of them are using their kids' savings to put in this instead. And the cool thing is because you don't invest in the stock market, the truth is you can use this money wherever you want. So this gives people freedom to say, hey, I can put this into their kids' savings. But what if you do like what one of my clients does? He's a veterinarian out in Indiana. He says, I can just take this money I have my 2 boys here, put it into their policy, and I can pull this money out and buy real estate deals with that and use the cash flow and buy more assets that pay me income that will essentially pay for their college later on, right? And that right there can actually create more certainty than just gambling in the stock market, especially if Elon Musk tweets something bad, So a lot of different ways you can use this. I know we could probably go into this forever, but really these are the kind of the main ways I teach of how this works best. Now, how do we get the double dip? How do we earn money in 2 places at once? Let's get into how this works with cash flowing investments. So most people, they have money in their savings account, they cash it out to put into investment, and then the cash flow from that investment goes and pays back into the savings account to start replenishing it so you can reinvest again. That's typically what it is, right? Pull the money out of savings, invest it, deploy it, and then when the returns come back and build up your savings, then turn around and buy the next deal and the next deal, right? Same exact strategy, but instead of using our bank, we use this. Now, I don't recommend just putting a big dump. I can already tell that there's going to be questions on this. By the way, we will have time for questions at the end, so don't worry here. But a lot of times you get questions. People say, hey, should I just dump in all my money at once? The answer is, from my opinion, no. There's many insurance agents that would love you to do that because they make a bigger commission because it rips you off. There are better ways to kind of put it in more steadily and still invest money too. We can give examples of that later on. But anyways, So here's the big thing is you can start putting money in here. Most of the time I have people start using their emergency fund money to kind of diversify their emergency fund at first. And then eventually they start building up more cash they can invest with too. Well, what you do is instead of just withdrawing the money, which is an option, you instead get a line of credit against the policy. Now you can go to a bank. So there are certain banks that specialize in these loans. You could go to them, but right now the interest rates are higher at the banks than they are with the insurance companies. Now, if you asked me 2 years ago, I can get 3% line of credit with the bank pretty easily while it's paying me almost 6% tax-free dividends. Like I'm already making money there and I still make money in my real estate. But right now, the insurance companies are the cheaper way to go. And so you can get a line of credit from the insurance company because your cash is used as collateral. This is almost like having a home equity line of credit, having a HELOC, but it pays you interest, right? Because you can have that money that's still there. It's still earning tax-free dividends in there, but then the insurance company gives you their money that you can then use for whatever you want. There are no restrictions. There is no application process like a mortgage. You literally can use the money for whatever you want. It takes maybe about, like I said, about a week for the whole process for them to transfer the money over to your bank account, but you can use it for whatever you want. So let's just say in this example, like you go put this into an investment. Well, that investment creates cash flow, and then you take the cash flow to pay back towards that line of credit. And as you pay that line of credit down, it builds up more cash. You can then turn around and invest again to do the same thing. Same thing you'd use with a savings account when you're trying to build up that money to then invest again. But instead, we're just using the line of credit with the insurance company. Here's the great thing, guys. That line of credit, you can pay it back however, whenever you want. The deadline for paying it back is your death. So you borrow $200,000 from the cash out of that, say it's $1 million death benefit. What they'll do is if you pass away at that point, they'll take their $200,000 back to pay off the loan, but then they'll pay your family the $800,000 net tax-free, right? So that's the cool thing that happens. But, I get a lot of people that either they're trying to invest in their business to get maybe a marketing strategy to work, which might take anywhere from a few months to maybe 9 or 12 months to work, or they might be trying to maybe they're trying to do a fix and flip with real estate. And then are wondering how can they get it to work? Well, with fix and flip, the hard thing is that you're not getting paid in the meantime, right? While you're trying to renovate it and do stuff. If you get a loan from the bank, you have to still keep paying the monthly payments. But with the life insurance loan, you do not have to do that. They will charge you interest, but it's like a student loan and deferral. You don't have to pay anything on it. And in fact, even after you're done with your project, you might even say, I'm not going to pay it back yet either. And you might just keep taking that money you got from the project, roll into the next deal, right? So there's always options to do that. But that's basically how I was doing it. So what's happening is you have your money still there. You're not withdrawing the money. So you're still earning interest on your money tax-free at about 5 or 6% or more, depending on where interest rates go next. You're earning tax-free interest there. And at the same time, you're getting a line of credit from the insurance company that, yes, you do pay them interest, but you're also earning money over there. And the great thing is, as you use this strategy, if you're using it to use the cash flow to pay back towards the line of credit, you make more net interest inside your policy while you're still making money on your investments or in your business or wherever you're putting that money. So you're actually making money in two places at the same time. Many times I'll show people that even if you get paid, say, 10% a year on a real estate deal, the cool thing is that this adds at least an extra 1 or 2% on top of it that you wouldn't get if you would just use a simple savings account. Now, let's go deeper. Like here's an example right now. Like say you're trying to put a down payment on a property, $30,000 loan, you get that policy, you get that from the policy, from the insurance company. You go and make $3,000 a year, and again, take that money and put it back in. Again, that just keeps building and building and growing it, that you can keep reusing it. And the great thing is, of course, because they keep paying you compounding interest while you're only paying simple interest on your loan, you again make a spread from the insurance company already. You're already making more than what they're paying you. And of course, you're making all the money from those investments too. Let me give you an example here. Say you have a small apartment you want to buy. When I say small apartment, I know 250,000 is no small change, right? I get that. But obviously, if it's $1 million apartment, it's probably a small apartment in the number of units. But say you put $250,000 down and the cash flow after you pay expenses is $2,500 a month. You have a choice. If you use your savings account, you now liquidate your savings account to pay that $250,000 down payment, and then you're going to be slowly building up your savings account $2,500 a month. Or do we use the life insurance to do that? What's the difference? Well, if you use your savings account after 9 years, get this, after you've paid your taxes, you made a whopping $1,228 of interest. Congratulations. Now, this is not a high yield savings account. This is earning, I believe I put it at a 0.2% rate for the savings account. But still, $1,228 of interest because you just liquidated your account. And again, now you're building up $2,500 at a time. You're making piddly, and not to mention you got to pay taxes on that. On the life insurance, doing the same strategy, but instead using that cash in there as collateral to get the loan from the insurance company. Same thing. And I use real numbers here. Guess what? 126,000 of interest. It's about 100 times more. Why? Because it's compounding. The money's all there. You didn't have to liquidate that 250,000. It's still earning tax-free higher dividend rates than what you're going to get from the bank anyways. And you're now able to leverage it and make cash flow from it too. So that's how you're able to really essentially make money twice. And as our good friend Christopher Walken says in Saturday Night Live, he's got a fever, but in our own words, the only prescription is more arbitrage, right? It's more leverage. That's the key. So, by the way, like a lot of people, I want to make sure I put this on here. I know you guys are going to be put in the chat too. If you have questions on this, you want to see how this actually works in your situation, because every situation is different. You can actually go right here. One, we actually got some free education we can help give you there too. But two, you can even book a time to be able to talk with somebody and just kind of get a free review to see what this is like. By the way, if you already have one of these, but you're not sure if it's working well, we can even do an apples to apples comparison to see, is it doing the right thing? Is it doing what you're hoping it would do and hoping what we would hope it would do? Or two, does something need to change here? Can it be done better? So definitely you can go to that protectwealth.com/money ripples. All right. Now, many people will say, yeah, but Chris, I could just go invest my money and I don't have to worry about those initial insurance costs. Because everyone will always ask, like, Chris, this sounds too good to be true. And the truth is that, yeah, it's pretty awesome. But here's the one, thing that creates drag on it is that unlike term insurance gets more expensive over time. Whole life insurance is front loaded. It's expensive up front, just like what I ended up paying for that crappy policy, right? All of my cash was going to cash value. By the way, we don't do it that way. Usually only about 20 to 25% of yours goes to expenses, while the other, and this is the first year, the most expensive year, while the other 75+% is in cash available for you to use. So I decided to run real numbers here. I said, well, let's take somebody who already invested 250,000, which, by the way, this is why I tell people also don't have to throw a bunch of money in. You can still got cash. Just use your emergency fund money to start funding the policy in the beginning. Take all your cash, invest it, and create some passive income. So I was showing somebody that if they had $250,000, they went and made 10% a year. So that's 25,000 a year of cash, of passive income. But then they're also adding another 30,000 a year into savings to then reinvest. So that's why in that first year, there's 55,000 bucks on the left side there, increasing. If they make 10% return, 5,500 bucks. Now they 25 goes to 30,500. You'll see after 10 years, just that simple, even making only 10%, which I know I can make more than that in real estate. I was trying to be conservative. Still, you can get up to about 112,000, and that's what we talk to a lot of our clients about doing. And again, I want to remind you, you do not need this strategy, this infinite banking strategy. You do not need this to become financially free. The truth is you become more financially free doing things like real estate than you will using this by itself. But when you use this, especially if you're going to be investing for more than 5 or 10 years, this is where it gets awesome. With how the cash value goes, yeah, it's behind in the beginning because there's less to invest because some of those insurance costs come up out front. The cool thing is after about the third or fourth year, it's already paying for itself. So essentially you have zero net cost of insurance costs coming out. It really is like a tax-free savings account after the third or fourth year. So eventually it starts catching up because it starts earning more than the actual savings account. And that's why you get to about 121,000 after that 10th year there with the cash that was left over. So even if this is the real magic, is that, again, it's not going to get you free, but if it can shave off even a year or two towards your goals of creating more passive income, this is worth it. And of course, we're talking about protecting your assets. Again, protecting your family, that just becomes icing on the cake. Let's be honest, right? This, I'm just using a strategy because I like to think like an investor because that's what I am, right? That's the big difference between what I do versus what you see a lot of these infinite banking guys do, is that they're all just insurance salespeople trying to pitch you on crap. The truth is that they don't really use it for that practical application, even like some examples, I've had some people say, well, how's yours differ? Well, I mean, I had somebody that sent me their numbers. I said, hey, I'm putting in 10,000 a year. I have 6,800. I said, well, guess what? We can save you about 800 bucks a year in that same example. And that's actually that's not even the best example that we could have done. I was just trying to do apples to apples to match the other guys. There are things, little levers you can pull and different things you can do to get a little bit better ROI in that situation. In fact, I had another guy who saw this popular guy on YouTube about infinite banking, was so excited to start a policy. And then when he told me that he was putting in 10,000 a year and he would only have 7,000 bucks as a 30-year-old, I said, dude, you could do better than that. So we showed him that he would actually have about 8,000 bucks instead of 7,000. So we actually save them $1,000 a year on that. And of course, that just ripples beyond it too. Like it just keeps saving and compounding in your favor. No difference, guys. Like it's not like you're losing anything. The thing that you're really gaining, of course, is that there's just less insurance costs coming out so that you can have more growth of that cash value, right? Sometimes people ask me about index universal life or IULs. They've become more popular lately. I'm not surprised. I sold them before they were popular 20 years ago. Here's the problem with these. Even though they can be good in some situations, for the most part, with this strategy, it doesn't work, right? One, there's no double dipping for the vast majority of these. There are a few that have that exception, but then they really don't pay you much. But that double dip effect where you're still earning compounding interest on your money while at the same time you can borrow against it, they don't do that. They'll give you like a 0% loan, but then your money in there doesn't grow anymore. So that's one issue. The other one is that costs go up because it's based on term insurance, and term insurance costs go up every single year. So it gets more and more expensive. And of course, there's no certainty because if the stock market doesn't do well, and then of course your costs are going up at the same time, it's possible you could lose money in those things. So there's really a lot less safety in those. And the crazy thing is, even when they try to predict, like maybe they'll make more money because of the stock market, like in this example right here, we still end up kicking the crap out of them. So, and not especially with cash that you can actually get to, because the main cash that they have is they have surrender fees and all kinds of stuff, and that's the one thing you just don't get with whole life. So, other reason that people do it, I was kind of polling different real estate investors and business owners. Said, hey, why do you do this? This one real estate investor, he says, I don't want exposure to banks anymore. Like that creditor protection is everything for me. He's a multi-millionaire as well. He's like, I want that credit protection, like creditor protection and lawsuit protection. Like if somebody sues me, I don't want anybody to get to my assets. I want money that's safe for me and for my family that people can't get to. Another guy on the right here, Ron, I actually just interviewed him for a podcast today. He's another real estate investor. And for him, he was getting ticked off. He had Chase Bank that all of a sudden now wasn't treating him as nice as they were before. Even though he had tens of millions of dollars in their account with him, still they said, well, you're not quite elite anymore. He said, forget you guys. I'm going to try to be nice here. He's like, forget you guys. I'm going to put my money elsewhere. And he's like, where did I put it? And then he remembered, oh yeah, I can put it in life insurance. I already got a policy. Let's get another one going. By the way, you can have multiple policies. You don't have to be stuck to just one. This couple right here, this guy's a dentist, they've been using it. Of course, they love that double dip effect and of course, leverage it with their bank or not having to have to borrow from the bank for that matter if they don't want to. The big thing is he says, I'm 59. He's like, I wish I had known about this earlier, right? I hear that all the time. This guy, he's actually 60 years old. He's been doing it, but again, for him, it's that double dip, right? He's like peace of mind though he has this tax-free interest-bearing asset that again is safe, but again with the lower costs, he can still be able to get that double dip. And for him, the death benefit is just icing on the cake, as I had mentioned earlier. So again, guys, if you have questions, you want to see how this really works. Protect Wealth, they set up a whole site for us there, protectwealth.com/money ripples. You can do that. Go ahead and start. If you got questions, start putting them in right now, just because there might be a delay between the time you do the question and the time I see it. But here's the thing, guys, is that my belief is I don't trust banks, right? I like banks and I use them, but I don't trust that, every time we get into this kind of bubble type situation, you always have to wonder, are the banks going to do something stupid? And what does that do for risking my own money? I never want to be in that place. I don't want to be in the place where I'm waiting for FDIC to finally give me my money back, right? I don't want to do that. I use banks, but I love having my money in a place where I don't have to worry about it. It's a great way to diversify my portfolio anyways, just to have safe cash that earns more than 0.nothing% and it's tax-free and again, protected. So that's the big thing I use it for. The fact you can do this whole double dip thing where you can get paid in two places at once, that's just icing on the cake as well, right? And the fact that you can protect your family so that not only can you create wealth today with it, if you use it the way I'm talking about versus the other old ways that they talk about, which doesn't really work great. But if you use this to actually buy assets, real cash flowing assets today to build your wealth now, you're already creating generational wealth that way. On top of that, you get the death benefit. But of course, if there's any taxes due, we know there's ways we can get around that because you guys learned that from Protect the Wealth here. But even then, even if we have to worry about if they decide to tax the rich and everything else, I know that this money's safe. I know that I've got the ability to be able to pass on to my family, protect them as well. And heck, just for the fact that there's death benefit, if I wanted to, I could blow all my money while I'm alive. I don't even have to leave them a dime. By the way, my dad made me pay for college. You know, he made me pay for everything pretty much. I'm kind of the same philosophy. I don't care if I could pay my kids way through life. I don't want to. I want them to struggle. I want them to learn on their own. I want them to create wealth on their own. I'll give them some knowledge and some guidance. And heck, you know, if they do a good job, they're wise stewards. I don't mind passing money along to them, but that's not my main goal. I want to create generational wealth by teaching them good, solid financial principles that allows them to create wealth in ways that the rest of America just don't learn. And it's not their fault. It's not your fault either. It's just the fact that there's financial companies out there that want you to stay ignorant and keep putting money with financial advisors so that you end up being part of the statistics that don't make it, right? And that's where we wanted to do it differently. So that's where I say unbank yourself, take control of your own life, your own future, your own passive income, make it work for you there. So, all right. So that's for my family, yours. Thank you so much. Should we dive into questions
Cute
there?
family, Chris. Very cute family. Excuse me. I love it, Chris. That's a lot of fun. Like we mentioned at the start of this webinar, the thing that we know here at Protect Wealth is, the question is, what about insurance and how does that work? And it's hard to answer that question because there's so much confusion. And a lot of the, like you say, professionals, Dave Ramsey's of the world, that say, don't do it, don't do it. Just pinch your pennies and save and save. And there's so many different opinions, a whole life, universal life, whatever. And so, but the thing that we do know is those who are most successful do have a strategy in place using some type of insurance like this. So that's why when we found Chris, we were super excited because I hope you can all tell Chris is a good guy. He tells it to you straight, and that's what we like about Chris is you give it to us straight, Chris. A lot of people kind of hide the ball a little bit, and for good reason because they're all about worried about commissions. And sadly, that's most insurance or financial advisors' game. Chris is not like that. It's more helping you build wealth long term and protect your family, which is what we at Protect Wealth are all about too. So, very cool, Chris. Thank you so much. Anyway. Before we get started on Q&A, I know a lot of people always ask. So if they click that link in the chat, protectwealth.com/money ripples, what happens? Is it a consult? How does that work?
Yeah. So when you go there, you can definitely set up a consult. There's a Calendly link that you can go to as part of that landing page there. And you can book a consult with Parker as the guy that I have on my team that will be answering those specific questions from you guys. By the way, Parker actually came from a long line of entrepreneurs. His dad was one of the biggest entrepreneurs in the state of Utah. So he gets this. His dad actually was the one that taught him how to do it. And his dad was a stock trader that said, "Hey, I just learned this works." And he even said, he's like, "You know what? This is the only thing in my portfolio that actually lasted." He's like, some of these other things worked out, some things not so much, but this is the one thing that I could always count on every single year,
Well, that's cool because we get a lot of questions like this. Really, we really do at Protect Wealth, and so that's why I said I love having you. So if you at all want to have questions for Chris or Parker, your team there, click that link, and then so it's just a calendar link. Set up a time, and it's Chris, no pressure. It's kind of easy to discuss things and see if it's a good fit or not, right?
Yeah. If it's not, we'll tell you. We'll be pretty honest with you there.
That's how we are too. I love it. Okay, Chris, if you're okay, I'll just read off a few questions really fast if we can, and we a lot coming in. So, okay, so Kim's asking, how is that supercharged savings are protected? Is FDIC included in addition, and what type of banks would these be a part of? So, I guess insurance companies, how are they protected?
Yeah, it's kind of what I mentioned earlier. They have what's called reinsurance that they all legally have to buy, right? They have to maintain that kind of insurance coverage for themselves. Those are just global insurance companies that actually do cover in case there's of any kind of default that they become insolvent. They make sure they pick up the bill that your death benefit and your cash in those policies are protected for life, really. So until another company comes and buys them up, they basically make sure it's protected.
That's cool. Okay, Robert, can the death benefit be structured so that the payout is not or does not become part of estate taxes? Good question.
Good news is death benefit is not taxable on life insurance, right? Now it does count as part of your overall estate value. So, I mean, that's one thing that does get confusing because it does add to your total value. But again, it's one of the few things that you're not going to get taxed on.
Yeah, but that's millions and millions and growing usually. So that's good. So for most people, it's not a huge deal.
Yep.
Okay, Anonymous. I love your name there. Must be French. I love that name. Anonymous is asking, after pulling out money from my whole life policy, should I pay it back with interest?
Well, yeah, my recommendation is pay at least interest only. So remember, they charge you interest. There's again that lie out there. People say you pay yourself back. That's bull. You do not pay yourself back interest. Okay. You're paying the insurance company or the bank, whoever you're using, you're paying interest to them. So if you don't want it to compound against you to where, even though you're compounding interest over here and you don't want the race to go on where you might possibly lose interest, pay at least interest only so it stays a simple interest while you're compounding interest and you'll still win out. So I recommend at least interest only. It doesn't have to be monthly. It could be every so often. It could be whenever there's a payout. That's totally up to you. There's no requirements. Like I said, oh, and these loans are not on your credit report. They're not anything like I said, you apply for. They're literally a private loan with the insurance company or with the bank, and you pay it back however, whenever you want.
That's pretty cool. I love that actually. All right. Tom's asking, how do you pick the insurance company that is most favorable? This approach, given there's a lot of companies that sell whole life policies.
Right? Yeah, there are a ton. That's one thing nice about being independently brokered, right? Is that we do not, you do not, there's a lot of companies out there. In fact, some of the most popular companies are some of the worst companies to use. Whenever somebody says, hey, I have a Northwestern Mutual policy, I'm like, we'll beat it. Well, do you want to see it? I don't even have to see it. I already know. They're so expensive. And they're expensive because they pay for those ads and those commercials to go to you, right? So you're paying for it whenever you see their names pop up. But there are some big, really good, solid companies out there. The biggest three that I like is Penn Mutual, Mass Mutual, and then Guardian. All mutual companies because they tend to pay more. They're like credit unions versus banks, where credit unions will pay a little bit more to the member. Same kind of concept there too. Um, but yeah, definitely it's there are a lot of companies. So we pick based on one thing only. Where can we manipulate the cost to make it as low as possible while still keeping it all tax free? And that's what we really try to do. So some companies don't want us to do that. And not to mention, most companies won't even teach you how to do this. We have to figure it out on our own because they don't want you to use this kind of system necessarily, because it's awesome. It's a good system to make it turn around in your favor versus the insurance company. But yeah, the companies that tend, like I mentioned, those three tend to give you more flexibility to be able to do that. But again, beware. I've had so many people say, "Oh yeah, Penn Mutual, you love them, right?" Yeah, I do. Yeah, well, I'm actually got this guy. He's quoting me. He's going to put me in underwriting right now with this, and then I look at it and say, it's the same insurance company, but he did not do the best deal for you. He still charged you more in cost than you should be paying right now. So you got to be careful.
Dude, that's good to know. And I learned that early on, even with real estate, mortgages, brokers.
Yeah.
You're an independent broker. It's the same thing. Absolutely. You can pick for a lot more. That's really cool. Okay. Carl's asking, what do you call this type of account?
And that might have been the question before, I was just getting introed into it or whatever. But I mean, we talk about infinite banking or whatever. I can't say the infinite banking concept that's trademarked, but we do have our own, the max ROI infinite banking is our trademark. So that's what we call it.
I like it. Okay. Julie's stopped learning about tax liens and tax deeds, setting up LLCs, using real estate investing, other self-directed accounts. How would adding life insurance fit in these strategies? Really well, actually, right?
Yeah, that's a great question because I mean, you are doing a lot of these different things. Of course, I can definitely tell they're probably a client of yours, aren't they? Is my guess.
Yeah.
This is good.
Yep.
I mean, this is exactly the strategy that all of our clients are doing because our clients do the same things too, right? They're investing in different types of real estate. Some have self-directed IRAs or 401ks. They use this. Here's how it would work, right? And I'll take the LLCs aside because they're good, and there's some things you could do with that with life insurance, but I'm going to save that for an attorney to talk about. But let's just talk about from the investing perspective. When someone has a self-directed IRA, we talk about options. A great thing for self-directed IRA is an investment that doesn't have any tax advantages, right? That could be like a lending, when you're lending money or you're doing a fund or something like that, where you're going to get taxed fully on that. However, on the other hand, if I want to buy real estate, especially because I know I can get the depreciation, the tax benefits from real estate, I don't want to put that in an IRA, right? I don't want to put it in there because I don't want to lose those tax benefits. So instead, I will use the life insurance to do the down payments or to buy that real estate. Then I get to keep all those tax benefits because it's not held inside the life insurance. Again, you're just pulling the money out like it's a savings account. So it's not like it's sitting, the investments aren't sitting in the life insurance. It's outside. It's whatever that is. So if you have an investment or a business strategy or whatever it is where you get tax benefits, use the life insurance for that. The things that don't give you tax benefits, that's where a self-directed IRA or 401k can work.
Judy, and this is a big deal for real estate investors. Anybody who's investing knows you need ways to access capital and earn interest, double dip on that capital. It's a pretty cool strategy. So pretty cool. Diana, I have money in Alliance, Ohio National, and a QRP we have under our S Corp. Is there something better we can do? I think I'm going to check it out. All right.
Yeah. Check it. I would just say, yeah, go check out the link. Ohio National. I mean, now they got, they changed into Augustar. That's been a horrible thing. I used to do Ohio. I used to use Ohio National more often, not anymore. They, demutualized. And so now we're seeing a lot of people now just hating the policies because they're getting paid like 3% on their policies when they could be making double that interest in other companies right now.
Interesting. Okay. And how soon can you start borrowing against it?
Yeah, for most of the way that people set it up, most of the time it requires them to wait a year. With how we set it up, it's technically I would say immediately, but technically it's 30 days because they want to make sure you're not a terrorist. So all the anti-money laundering stuff, they want to make sure you're not just pulling out right away. But yeah, 30 days. So almost immediately you can get access, and it's 95% of whatever cash is in there. So if you put in, say, $20,000, you pay 20,000 in, say that 4,000 came out to pay for insurance costs, you have 16,000 left, you could probably leverage 15,000 right after those 30 days.
Oh, that's really cool. Okay. I love that. Rebecca, how do you factor in the cost of insurance?
Well, the good news is we don't have to. The insurance company does all that for us and their software and stuff. Here's the one thing I wish we could do. I wish the insurance companies would just let you play with the numbers yourself, right? I mean, granted, it probably would be, maddening for you a little bit, but really the factor in the cost of insurance, it's already a part of that. What we really try to do is we try to minimize the death benefit as low as we can go. So we reverse engineer. So say that, for example, you want to put in a max of up to $25,000 a year. Based on your age and health and everything else, we'll try to figure out what's the minimum death benefit needed to allow 25,000 a year to go in and still stay tax-free. Now, if you put 25,000 and a penny in, you'll trigger taxes. It'll turn into basically like an IRA, right? Like into a qualified plan. So we don't want to do that. But we'll try to get that death benefit as low as possible to make the insurance costs as low as possible so that it grows the cash faster. That's really the secret.
No, very clear. I love that. That is the secret. I love that. Okay. Kathy, if you're using your emergency money to fund the whole life, what happens if something happens to you and you need the money?
Great question, because I probably should have described that a little bit better. So like I said, like say you put in 25,000 in that first year, you'll have about 20,000 in cash in that first year. That's the most expensive year is year one. Year two is the second most expensive, then year three, and then after that, like you can't even hardly tell anymore because it's negligible. You make more in dividends by year four than what you pay in insurance costs. So we try to factor that in. So say that you want your emergency fund $100,000, we will probably tell you don't put in more than maybe 50,000 a year, right? So then even if you put in 50,000 twice, the 100,000 in there, all in the meanwhile, over those 2 years, you're still saving money too, hopefully, right? Say you're still saving money. Even if you had that money sitting in the bank account on the side there for those 2 years, still you would have probably about 85,000 sitting in cash. So you still have the ability to get to it. And like I mentioned, after the first 30 days, you can get to that cash, right? You can access it either by withdrawing it or borrowing from the insurance company.
Interesting. Okay. Reggie, when you use a policy of a family member that is younger than you, their premium will be less, but can you still control use the cash value in the policy? Interesting.
You can if you're the owner. Yeah. So if you're talking about, I mean, it depends on who you mean by younger than you. If it's like a spouse. By the way, big hint here: women live longer. You probably already knew this, right? But because of that reason, women get the best ROI over men. If you're the same age, same health rating, women get the better ROI. Kids, they are a lot cheaper if you're a minor, if you're under the age of 18 or 19. But so yeah, it's a lot cheaper, but it also means you can't put in as much. However, they cannot be the owner of their own policies because they're minors. So you could become the owner of the policy. And even if you're the one paying for it, you can make yourself the owner. You can make yourself the beneficiary. So if anything happens, you get paid out. You can own and control it. So when I gave that example of the veterinarian with the 2 sons, and he's putting that money in to go buy real estate with their cash, he owns and controls all of it. They have zero access to those funds. And even when they turn 18, still no access to those funds, right? Not like some of those joint saves accounts. Like I remember happened to me and my sister. I remember she actually was when she turned 18, she jumped in and grabbed her joint savings account, before my dad could get to it because she's like, it's mine now, you know. So they can't do that with the life insurance because you're going to own and control it. They can only have control if you turn over ownership to them at some point, which you do have the prerogative to do. The way I like to look at it is this, is that if people are trying to save it up for like their college savings, or even if they don't go to college, that's the thing about 529 plan. You have to use it for specific universities and colleges, right? Well, what if you get a full ride scholarship and you don't need it? Or what if, they don't go to college because they become an entrepreneur? Well, now you got this 529 plan. What are you going to do with it? Here, you don't have those stipulations. You can use it for whatever you want, and they don't even have to know about it. So you could be using it for your own ventures and stuff. And then maybe down the road, they're maybe 25 or 30. And you say, hey, they're getting married. Yeah, we'll give them a wedding gift. I'll give this to them, and they can even keep funding it if they want to fund it, and it'll be a nice surprise, right? So there's a lot of ways you can use it.
That's kind of cool. Okay. All right, we kind of answered a little bit of this, but what rates can we borrow at, and do we pay monthly for the amount borrowed?
Yeah, so the rates do vary company to company. Right now, almost every company is right around 6% or so currently for their. So they've gone up as interest rates have gone up, but not a lot. Even when they were dirt cheap, they were still right around like 5% interest rates back then. So they haven't changed much. And do you have to pay monthly? No, you can pay it back however, whenever you want.
And if not, which other cash value insurance gives you 5% dividends? And that's policies
That's
you're
whole
talking
life.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most
All right,
whole
Robert.
many whole life, not all of them, of course. So that's why you have to, depends on the company.
Okay. I assume when you borrow the cash value to use on other investments, one, you pay interest in the borrowed funds, and two, you're no longer collecting interest in the policy in the funds you borrowed, correct?
One is true. You do pay interest on the borrowed funds, right? But two is not true. You still earn interest on that money. That's the cool power behind it, right? So
Amazing.
say you have $100,000 sitting in cash, you borrow 50 from the insurance company, you're still earning tax-free dividends on full $100,000. That's all earning there because you didn't touch it. Now you're paying interest
That's
for that
cool.
50,000 you borrowed, right? And you're paying that to them however you want. But yeah, that 100,000 is still in there earning interest.
That's really cool. Okay, and this may be a similar, but Ling asked, which insurance company do you recommend for collateral?
Yeah, I mean, really, it doesn't really matter for the collateral end of things. It's really based on how much cash value, how much cash you have in there. That's what they use as collateral. So ideally, I guess if you want to take it another step further, is whichever one charges us the least amount of cost so that we can get the biggest gain, right? That's what we want. And like I mentioned, those top three companies are all pretty good, just depending on your situation.
Ooh, okay. All right, Michael, great question. Is there a way to combine
Mm.
this process with a Roth IRA and still invest in real estate?
Answer is no. They have to stay separate of Roth IRA, even though they have very similar tax rules. They are separate. Here's why. Roth IRAs, if there's ever a qualified plan I like, it's a Roth IRA. But the one thing I don't like about anything with IRA, 401k, or any tax code associated to it is that the government controls the terms and you have to follow with whatever they decide at that moment. So right now we have the 59.5 rule where they'll charge you 10% penalty if you try to withdraw before then. What if they change that age to 62.5 down the road? Because they're saying, well, people are living and working longer. We'll push it back, right? Well, now you have
I
to go
bet
with
you.
that rule, whether you like it or not. What if they decide to tax Roth IRAs in certain situations, or especially situations like mine? What if they say, well, Chris, you're in the top 1% of wealthy people out there. Maybe we should tax you anyways, so you don't get the benefit of a Roth. Or, well, already I make too much for a Roth unless I do a backdoor Roth, right? So for those kind of situations, if they change the rules, you're kind of just stuck with going with whatever the government tells you. And I just don't trust the government. Sorry, I just don't. The nice thing with life insurance, I didn't mention this, is that it is a contract. Whatever the rules are at the time you set up the policy, remain in force the rest of your life. So let me repeat that. Whatever the rules are at that time, when you set the policy, remain that way the rest of your life. Tax rules, whatever they are, they remain in force as a contract. So you're grandfathered in. So that's a key distinction
Wow.
between the two. And that's why they can't really have the same tax code.
I didn't know that. That's actually really neat.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, love that. Love that. I think we'll see some changes retirement plans here in the future. I totally agree with you. All right. Can you purchase a long-term care rider for the policy?
Oh, see, there's one up above it for that One America question.
Oh yeah, excuse me. I scrolled down too far. I have a current infinite banking policy with One America. Are they good?
One America is a good company. They're another one that we've licensed with as well. but I generally don't use them because I can't really get the numbers to work out as good as some of the other companies. So are they good? Yes. Are they the best? Usually not. But they are very popular. I'll tell you this though, the reason that you see them very popular, especially with the guys that are you see on YouTube and things like that. Of course, I'm on YouTube, but other guys on YouTube. The reason is because One America, and I know because they offer it to us, pays a lot higher percentages, higher compensation. So they pay a much higher compensation to the agent, and that's why agents really push it. Even if they know for a fact it will get beat by other companies, they'll still push it because they'll say, "Oh, it's good enough because I want to get paid well." So
And most people
again,
don't
good
know that.
company. No, of course not. They're not going to advertise that, right? I mean, when someone says, well, "Why do you like the company?" Well, I like it for this reason. No, you get paid more because that's the only thing I could find that they do better than the other companies, that they pay better.
Interesting. I love it. Okay. And can you purchase long-term care rider for the policy?
Some policies you can. That's correct. Generally though, I recommend people get a separate long-term care policy because it's kind of a quasi long-term. It doesn't really cover long-term care. And here's the truth, because most of it they just let you tap into some of the cash value, but we make them so cash rich in the first place. If people are going to use the cash value, they're just going to use the cash value anyways. So they don't need a long-term, they don't need to pay extra for a long-term care rider when they're going to access the same funds, right? So I just
Makes
tell them if you
sense.
want that extra income from long-term care, just get a separate policy for that.
That makes sense. Okay, I'm not sure about this one. Have you ever met Nelson Nash? Is she a smart guy? He must be one out there in the industry.
I've never met him. He actually passed away a few years ago. But is he a smart guy? Absolutely. Definitely a smart guy.
Okay. Can a trust acquire a whole life policy?
Yes. You can actually have a trust own and or be the beneficiary of a whole life policy. Yeah, I know you guys teach this, we talk about like irrevocable life insurance trust. Now they even have revocable, trusts you can do and stuff. In fact, life insurance can be a critical component with your trust.
Absolutely. Should be. Absolutely. Okay, Robert, what's the best way to rectify having a bunch of very seasoned policies with Ohio National? Yeah, it happens a lot.
Yeah, Robert, I love the questions. By the way, you got to we got to give him some award for the most questions I think out of this
That's a
group
good
here.
one.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, if you got a bunch of season policy with Ohio National, there could be a few options. I mean, definitely talk with Parker. I'll tell you this: trying to move over the money tax free, you can do what's called a 1035 exchange, where you can roll over the cash from one policy to the next tax free. But Ohio National, or what used to be Ohio National, drags their feet. It's a nightmare. It will
I
easily
wonder
take
why.
4 to 6 months. They'll take your money overnight, right? They'll take your money that day, but they do not want to let go of the money because they are hurting so bad. So there could be a few options. You might be able to keep it there and still be okay. Some cases we've just told people, you might be better off if there's no tax possibilities, maybe just cashing it out, getting the cash, because that might be faster than trying to transfer it over and waiting for that whole process. So there's definitely options, but I'll tell you, yeah, moving that money over tax free, that which is an option. It's not, and it's not a quick overnight option. I'll tell you that much.
1035 exchange, kind of neat.
Yeah,
Okay, Michelle, can the insurance carrier change the setup, i.e., the interest rate you earn? Ooh, so that be
good
changed later.
question. They can't change the setup, but they can change the dividend rates and the loan rates.
Hmm.
I'll give you an example. One, the company I tend to use the most is Penn Mutual for a few reasons. One, because we can beat even the other companies I write with, beat all their numbers hands down, right? But another reason is too is that they don't like to change their rates that often. So, for
Hmm.
example, the dividend rate with that company specifically over the last, now it's going on over 15 years, has been between 5.75 and 6.34%.
For
So
15 years.
for the last 15 years. So even during the Great
That's
Recession,
amazing.
right, they were still paying over
Wow.
6% during that period of time. And the dividends
Wow.
tend to they're kind of slowly based on the interest rates that you're earning. So it got to the lowest post 2020 when rates were low. And then it's still at 5.75 with that particular company now, but they're already predicting 2025 to go over 6% again. So,
It's
so
great.
they can change that rate, but I like using companies that don't like to change it much. Companies like Northwestern Mutual is notorious for saying, "Hey, we'll pay 7% this year, but then they'll pay 4% the next year just to get people's business, and then they'll screw them on the other side." So you don't want that kind of flip floppy nature. The loan rates do change, but they tend to follow whatever the dividend rates are doing. So if dividends are going up, loan rates tend to go up. If they go down, loan rates go down.
Interesting. Okay. All right. We may have answered this one already. I have an 18-year-old son. Can I still own and control the policy?
Yeah, and you can. Yep, and you can own and control policy even if they're in their 20s, especially if you're still financially responsible for them.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Oh, this is more of a statement. 529s are actually pretty versatile. You have other options. That's true. That's changed. Laws have changed a little bit on those. Polly and Mike, if you're in your 60s, is this feasible to invest in? Are you looking at a huge amount to fund? Good question.
If you're in your 60s and you're in decent health, then yeah, it still works. Like you saw the one couple dentist, he's like, I'm 59 years old now. I mean, he was doing it as well. The other guy actually, he was talking about how he likes the double dip. He's actually in his 60s too. But like I said, if you get into your 70s, you could still set a policy up, but the infinite banking part of it is not going to be as awesome. And just so you know, every year you get older, it gets more expensive. So the cheapest your policy could probably be is right now.
Love it. Okay. All right. Nick has a good question. So he says, you lost me when you're describing about if you have 100,000 in the account and borrow 50, how are you still earning interest on 100? If you took out 50, how is that possible? Good question.
Yeah, no, Nick, that confuses a lot of people. So the 100,000's in there, it's still earning interest, right? But you're not touching that money. You're getting a separate line of credit from a bank or an insurance company. So they're giving you their money, right? They're giving you their money. Your money doesn't get touched at all. They're just giving you their money on a loan. So you still got to pay them interest, but your money's still in their earning tax-free dividends. So that's how you do it. You can actually do this. You can actually walk into a bank today. If you've got a savings account right now, you can walk into a bank and ask them, say, can I get a secured line of credit using in my savings account as collateral? And the answer is yes. And they'll give it to you very easily. Now, the spread of what they pay you versus what you pay for it, not great, right? Which is why I don't do it. But I've done it before. I actually walked in, I had 25,000 sitting in the savings account. I said, let's get a line of credit, and they gave me an okay interest rate, but it was much higher than what they were paying me. So they make sure that they make a spread on it where the insurance company gives you more favorable terms.
Oh, that's interesting. I love that. A great way to describe it. Borrowing against your savings. I love that. All right. So, Jewel, what grade insurance rating do you work with? What grades are the insurance companies there?
Well, I just saw the Mass Mutual one disappear. What I think about Mass Mutual, like I said, is one of my top
Oh,
three
sorry.
favorite. It's probably my number two favorite. It could be set up well. Again, we can always take a look. Just for everybody, if you have a policy currently that you've had for at least a year, the best thing you do is call up the actual insurance company you're with and ask for what's called an in-force illustration, like IN
Ooh.
force illustration. That will just kind of say, here's what's projected to do from here on. Then we can kind of see how it's doing. Sometimes it may not be set up the best, but if you've been in it for a while, we might just say, you know what, just stay with what you have. It's not worth changing anything. We'll be honest that way to let you know. If it is worth changing, we'll also be honest and let you know too. We'll have an opinion for sure. But so yeah, Mass Mutual, a great company, but again, it's about how the agent set it up. And the best way to know that is to ask for those, what's called an in-force illustration, forward it to us, and then we can do an apples comparison.
And that was
Um,
Jared. Sorry, Jared. I actually bumped your question there. You wanted to know if it made sense and if the policies you currently have are in your best interest. So you suggest, Chris, probably just meet with your team. So that
yeah,
link there in the chat, click that, and they can look at that for you.
absolutely. We'll be more than willing to help you. I said
Okay.
that,
Now, is there a certain grade ratings you work with in companies?
yes. They have what's called the Comdex score, if you've heard of that. I generally like companies that have at least minimum upper 80s score out of
Hmm.
100. And now I'll tell you, the Comdex score is not everything because, for example, you'll see some of the biggest, New York Life, Northwestern Mutual, like up there near 100, right? And that's great, but that's all that really means is that they're really big and they charge a lot of money. By the way, New York Life's not a bad company either. I'm looking into that a little bit more because they're starting to become more favorable for this strategy, even though they haven't been in the past. But yeah, we like to have a higher rating. I don't like anything that's weak, which is why I stopped writing with Ohio National several years ago because I started to see the trajectory of where they're going, and so I started changing direction on that one.
That's nice. Okay, good. Can I invest in an IRA for this product? We kind of covered that, but not really. You can't really do that with your IRA, correct?
Yeah, and then also go another route with that. You cannot roll over an IRA into this because again, different tax treatment, so you can't can't mix them together that way. Most people, if they're going to use an IRA to fund it, they'll just cash out from the IRA and then fund the premium after taxes.
Interesting. Okay. And Michael, as a trustee for my family trust, can we buy a policy that benefits all 7 siblings? And could you give me a strategy to implement using investment, i.e., real estate?
Yeah, you can definitely do that. There's definitely different types of policies you can set up. The main litmus test they have with insurance companies is that they just need to make sure that there's some financial self-interest in the person you're insuring. So obviously, if it's part of an estate and these are dealing with like, passing on generational wealth and things like that, as long as there's a financial self-interest, yes, you can do it. Sometimes you just have the siblings on the policy. Sometimes you have the trust just own it on everybody. There's different nuances there. But yeah, we can definitely assist you with that and showing you how that all works.
Okay, next few questions talk about can you take policies out for grandkids, parents, siblings, grandchild? You kind of covered that, but really, are there limits? How does that work? I mean, can you just find some
Yeah.
random stranger and get a policy on them? How does that work?
Only if the stranger you have a financial self-interest, right? But yeah, whether it's
Okay.
grandkids, grandkids can be a little trickier, but not so much. I mean, I've done that before. The key is if you get something for the grandkid, the kids also have to have more insurance than what you're getting the grandkids. Because the thing they don't want, and this applies to even your own children, is they don't want the child or somebody who's financially reliant upon somebody else to have more of a death benefit than what the breadwinner has, right? The breadwinner should have the higher death benefit. So again, even though we don't focus on that, it does have some limitations, but yes, you can get policies as long as like I had one guy who was a grandfather. He had basically he decided to help fund the policy, even though we had his own daughter buy even just a term insurance policy on herself, but he's paying her the money for the term insurance policy. And then, of course, he then bought a policy on his grandson as well. So he bought policy on the daughter, or kind of indirectly bought it for her, but then he also got one on the grandchild. Again, make sure that the death benefit wasn't more. Parents, you can do the same thing, but although most time when we have people looking at their parents and realizing it's a lot more expensive than just getting on yourself, sometimes they don't go for it, or we just find another alternative. For example, there are some universal life policies that, especially if somebody's in their 70s or so, they might be a more affordable option than doing whole life, even though it may or may not be better. So there are some situations there, but again, depending on your situation, we can always see like what makes the best sense.
Health situations too. So if health comes into play, you want
For
to get a
sure.
policy. Health definitely matters. Okay. All right. So the question is, so a few questions on this. So how does the insurance company make money? How are you compensated? How does that work? And that's a good question, guys, because a lot of times in the financial world, it's all smoke and mirrors, and it's hard to know how this works. We try to be upfront with everything we do. Chris is too. Kind of maybe shine a little bit of light on that, Chris.
Yeah. So the self-interest for the insurance company is they want to be profitable, right? That's their big thing. The thing that they do like, even though that's not really what they want, but the thing that they do like is that we go for the minimal death benefit needed for whatever amount of cash is going in. The crazy thing is it still builds up the death benefit over time faster too, the way we do it. But initially, it's a lower death benefit than what some people would sell you, right? They might try to sell you on a $3 million policy, but we might get you a policy that's only like 600, 700,000 of a death benefit. So all the insurance company really thinks of, and the only thing they can see from their little narrow lens is just death benefit. That's all they care about. Like, you know, first, is this person worth it? They never, ever, ever want to overinsure you. That's why you can't just ask for $1 billion of coverage. They won't give it to you, right? They will make you pull your pants down in a financial sense, right? To figure out what makes you so valuable, because they just never, ever want to overinsure, even if you say you can pay the premiums. So just know that they like to pay as little as possible on the death benefit side. The cash value is the part we care about. And yeah, that's part of it too. That's part of that death benefit, but still they just care about the death benefit. So they're not overly concerned about the cash value portion of it.
Yeah, and this is where I guess a lot of people will question you. If you say, "Hey, I'm going out to get a whole life insurance policy," you know this, Chris. Everyone comes back with, "Well, Dave Ramsey's of the world. My dad, my
Mhm.
brother-in-law said, don't do it. It's too high commissions. You're paying way too much for that." What do you say to that, Chris?
Well, it's true. It can pay good upfront commissions, but it's crappy on the back end, right? And like I said, Really, all insurance agents are paid off of are the insurance costs. And as it's front loaded, you get paid more there. But over time, I get paid more on a term insurance policy. In fact, every dollar you put into a term insurance policy, I get paid on, right? I get paid a commission, a percentage of commission on that amount because it's all going to your insurance costs, right? Nothing's going to cash value. When your money goes to cash value, I'm not really getting paid on that, right? I'm getting paid on the stuff that goes in the insurance costs. So, although there's truth to that, the reality is that on term insurance, I can make just as much, if not more, in commissions because of that reason, and make it for longer. So it's kind of a weird point, but I see what he's saying. You know what Dave Ramsey and all them say, but the truth is, if you design it the right way, it can be done where it's in your benefit, not the insurance agent's benefit.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Robert says, contact me. He's excited to work with you. You know, has some questions about grandkids and different things. Love that. That's great, Robert.
Yep.
We definitely reach out. Bucky, is there ever a situation where dividends are less than interest rate on your line of credit? Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, there are. I mean, in many cases they can be, right? Now, like for example, one company, they might have like a 0.65% spread where you pay 0.65% more than what you're getting paid. But like I said, even if that's the case, even if it was more than that, even if there was a bigger spread, you can still make it work in your favor. And I have like a podcast episode I did called The Miracle of Simple Interest, which explains why if you pay 3% on your mortgage, you only need to earn about 1.4% in a CD with that money sitting in there that could pay off your mortgage, but you let it sit there for 30 years, it'll still beat the interest rate or match the interest rate at 3%. So compounding interest and simple interest are not the same. So when you're paying back that line of credit, even if it's just interest only payments, or if it's more than interest only because you're paying back the full cash flow, pay back towards that line of credit, what happens is that the interest you're being charged, just like if you have a car loan, a mortgage, anything else, more and more goes to principal, less and less interest. The interest you're being charged shrinks. But on the flip side, in your compounding interest savings, it's compounding. So it has a curve that goes like this, while the interest you're paying goes like this. So even though there's a spread where you could be in the hole up front initially when you have that loan, eventually, because as you start to pay down that loan and the other balance keeps going, you will still beat the interest rate, even if it's a little bit higher.
It's amazing. So this is one thing that I think, you know, myself included, I learned late in life. Totally different compound versus simple interest. You have to understand and leverage that to your best ability. And sometimes if you're getting a 3% like you used to on mortgages, a lot of people just say, I got to pay it off. No, absolutely not. If you can earn a lot more interest like you can in your policy, never pay that off. And that's a huge strategy wealthy people, real estate investors use every single day. That's why this makes this so compelling, Chris. I love that.
Well, that's the myth, right? The myth has always been, well, if I'm paying 3% on my loan, I got to make at least 3% to beat it. And the truth is, if you're compounding your money, no, you don't. You just have to earn usually at least half the interest rate to beat it from a compounding versus simple.
Okay, so is an annuity something that's completely different than a whole life policy?
It is an annuity, although it's set up through a life insurance company. It is it's more like a CD in a sense, right? It's got terms and things like that. It's more of a savings vehicle. Definitely not like whole life insurance though. Not something you could do this strategy with that way.
Yeah, don't get those confused. A lot of people get those very confused. Annuities, insurance, you know, they're all different animals, and you definitely need to learn and understand the differences. Chris, I love it. Michael says, by the way, I'm very impressed. Your succinct, direct, and honest answers. That's why we like Chris. Thank you very much. Do you offer the whole life index type policies?
Yeah, there's a thing that's kind of starting to become popular. I would say this, it's not even become popular. It's more being beta tested by a few insurance companies, what's called indexed whole life, where it's whole life insurance, but then they have a component where the money you earn in dividends and the interest that you're earning can get invested still with the stock market index or something like that. Yes, we have companies that do that, but I don't trust it. So I think it's too early. I think they're testing it out right now. And so I don't like to be the guinea pig with it. If somebody asks and insists on it, yes, we can help them set it up, but it's not something I trust quite yet.
Yeah, never good to be a guinea pig in the financial world, I don't think. Nick, okay, we've got a few questions left, guys, and then we're gonna let Chris get back to his family. But Nick, I will have a 1031 situation coming up. Can I use that to fund this policy, then borrow, or will I need to pay the capital gains And is that worth it?
You would need to pay the capital gains. Yeah. So if you use 1031, you can't 1031, 1035, not the same exchange, right? Going into life insurance. So you can use it to fund it. The real question is it worth it? That would be the question I would ask too is, depending on your tax situation, this is where a good CPA helps. And protect wealth, come on. But having a good CPA helps there, because if you have a CPA that says, well, in your situation, you really don't need a 1031 exchange. Well, great. That's free game. If you do need to do it, awesome. It just depends on your situation and how it's going to affect your tax.
Interesting. Good question though, Nick. Anastasia, I hear that paper money is headed to all crypto or digital money and soon. How do you think that will affect our investments? Interesting.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I don't think it'll affect it a lot. I know some people I got ripped apart on a forum where somebody said, where I said that. I was like, it didn't mean that I don't think there's some bad consequences of going all digital, right? But affecting our investments, if anything, it might make it easier and faster, which could create another bubble or even a bigger bubble than we're in currently. So
I agree.
that could be good and bad depending on the situation.
Yeah, it's interesting. No one really knows yet. That's all, again, being beta tested pretty much. Diana, what happened with the Herald National where they sold the other company and the money promised 10 years ago when we started was paid out like 25 cents on the dollar? Can another insurance company do this in the future? So like what's happening with Ohio National, you're not as happy with it. What do you think moving forward?
There's always a possibility for sure. And it's not like people lost money. It just the dividends started dropping fast, right? The thing with Ohio National, they were doing some in the last recession, they had some annuities that they had that weren't very profitable. They promised a too high a return that they couldn't deliver on. And so all the profits were being sucked out of the company to help those annuities. In fact, I remember getting called into a meeting and they were trying to incentivize any advisors that had clients in those to get them out of it into new annuities so they wouldn't have to pay so much money out to these clients, which of course the clients didn't want to do. So that could happen.
Yeah.
Again, it's always good to have a company that has good, strong fundamentals, and it's always possible. But for the most part, the bigger companies, you're probably not going to see a situation like that. That was more of a medium to small size company.
Okay. All right. If you will be receiving a large sum of money as well as a payoff, would investing in a whole life policy cancel any of the taxes due on funds?
No, it wouldn't. No, you're using after-tax dollars just like if you funded a Roth IRA. So whatever taxes are there are there.
We wish. Yeah, we wish.
Yeah, I know. It'd
All
be
right, Chris,
awesome
I don't know if you can. Yeah, we wish. If you can put up your slide again with that link, just so you can see it visibly. I did put the link in the chat just because I want to give everybody a resource. We got to wrap this up, and I want to give you a resource to reach out to Chris's team. The main thing is, protectwealth.com/money ripples. That's just a resource for you to reach out to Chris's team and literally schedule on a calendar, and they can look at what you're doing now and see how that might fit. We love that kind of stuff because it's just using money multiple ways to your advantage for you and your loved ones for your future. We couldn't ask for anything more, Chris. I love that so much. Really appreciate the strategy and super excited about working with you and really appreciate your time tonight. Chris, anything to add before we close?
No, I just appreciate everybody hanging in there. Like, I mean, this is past my bedtime right now. So, again, to you and Dawn, I mean, thank you again for inviting me on. And I hope this is valuable for you guys. And just let us know any way we can serve you, any way possible.
I think the only thing is maybe some videos for maybe some of those dancing you used to do, ballroom dancing, maybe style, maybe that in the future.
That's right. You gotta show me we want to, 30, 20 years and 20 pounds ago, right?
Let's do it. Bring it on. I don't believe it. Chris, thank you again so much for your time. Everybody, thank you for your time as well. Please reach out if we can help with anything. We'll look forward to seeing you guys soon. Hope you all have a great night.